Hello everybody, welcome to episode 2 of my guide to spreadsheets. So, in this episode, we will be discussing graphs and timelines. And to start, we have this very nice data set which I've gotten from this website, which is up on screen right now, and also in the description. So if you'd like to go and copy over this data set, or maybe find a different data set to just practice on, then please go over to that website. I'll give you a few seconds to copy that over. Alright, let's get into it. Feel free to follow along. So, this is a very nice data set since it has a lot of different columns for us to experiment with graphing. Firstly, I think we could start with a very basic single data set. So we can just select one of these columns. I'll do column D, which in this data set is items, as this is a data set for a store that's shipping stationary items, right? So you just select your data set, right? In this first example, I'll just keep it simple, one column, right? So then you click insert, and then you click chart. And then that's it, right? Then you get a chart. Pretty simple. It's quite smart actually, Google Spreadsheets. It will, basically what it'll do is it'll see what kind of data you have. It saw here that it's only text, and it assumed that it wanted a count of each item, right? And that's what it did. So now we have count of item. So now this menu also is very, it can be complicated at times, but it's also very well organized. So firstly, if you click on anything in here, then it'll automatically open that on the right here. So if I click on the title, then it'll automatically open the settings for the chart and axis titles, right? If I click on the individual bars, then it'll open the settings for those, right? So that's a very nice way. If you want to change a specific thing, then you can just click on that thing in the little graph here, and it'll automatically open the settings for that. So, for example, for the chart title, I can change the font, I can change the size. In the actual bar settings, you can change the fill and line colors. Up here in chart style, this is a very important one. We can change the background colors as well as change just generally how it looks. So if you click maximize here, notice it'll take up as much space as possible. If we click 3D here, then it'll go 3D. I personally don't like using the 3D because it can make reading the chart a bit annoying, but do what you like, I guess. If we go into compare mode, nothing happens. Pretty crazy. So yeah. So this is the customized settings. We can also go into setup up here, right? Here you can change the chart type, and I'll get into more of these as we mess around with more charts, but one that could work for this data set that we've selected right here, the singular column, is a pie chart, just to basically see, easily compare how much of each item is being sold. That's what pie charts are for, really. I mean, just comparing percentages and general ratios. See, and that's one thing that this is really useful for. I mean, it can automatically get the count and all, and you just have to click a few buttons, and then now you have an easy way to visualize the ratios between each of these items. So that's a very simple chart, right? Singular column. Notice when you're in the editor here, you can't delete the chart. You have to exit the editor and then select it and then delete it, right? So now let's do a second one. This one will go fancy. We can go region. We'll select the region, right? And now let's then select total, as in total earnings from that region, right? So notice, you try to select both, doesn't work, right? What you need to do is you need to hold control down, and yeah, then you can select both columns even if they're far apart. Then once again we go insert and then chart, and then if you look at this, you'll see this is pretty crazy, right? Because well, the automation didn't exactly work right, and then now it's assuming that each one of these separate regions is a separate data set when we want them to be all calculated together, right? So one very simple solution to this, on the right here, there's a little button that says aggregate. If we check that, then it'll automatically take all the labels that are named the exact same and then just add them together, right? And the nice thing here is you can have it as the sum of similarly named things, or you can have it as the average, as the count, which is what we were using earlier, maximum, minimum, median, whatever you'd like. So it's very easy to change this and then have a look at different things. See, if we go into average, we notice that all three regions are earning roughly the same amount on average, although West is slightly lower, right? And that's one of the things that can be very easily visualized if you know what you're doing with these tools. So now I'll get rid of this chart as well, and I believe that is enough for graphs. I think we can move into timelines. Alright, so let's get into this second part of this episode, which is, well, timelines. So firstly, to start, you must know, so this is what the timeline function looks like, but the important thing is you can't access it from every single version of your Google Workspace, right? So for example, I'm on my account for this YouTube channel in particular, which is just a basic account, right? If I go into insert, notice there's no option for timeline. Usually it would be right here. If I go into my school account, onto the same document shared with the same people, and then I go into insert, there is an option for timeline, right? So just so you know, you can't create a timeline unless your workspace account is of a specific version. If you're wondering, these are the editions that are eligible. I would currently be using the Education Standard edition, right? So, just so you know, and to avoid any unnecessary confusion. So anyways, let's get to this. I have another sample data set, which I got from the same website. This is a sample work order data set. Notice the full data set is very large. It's like hundreds and hundreds of orders. I shortened it down to about 35, just to keep our timeline not too convoluted. So, to create a timeline, you just click Insert here, and then, whoops, once again, wrong account. You need to be careful with that. You go into Insert, Timeline, right? And then you can just click OK. And then it creates a timeline. Notice my data set is wrong here because I had this specific box selected. What you need to do instead is you select all of those and then see this right here. As I mentioned earlier, you can just copy that. So we can paste in sheet 2 exclamation mark, right? And now it can automatically fill in the timeline. So if you look at the sheet, right? Also, just so you know, wait, let me just expand this upward slightly. So if you look down here, for your information, I have this first sheet is our graphs, and this sheet is the actual data, and then it creates a new sheet for the actual timeline, just so you know. So notice here, there's one really major thing which you need to have in your data for the timeline function to work, which is two different date values, right? So here we have a REQ date, standing for request date, so when a work order was placed, and then a work date, which is when a work order was completed, right? So in this case, these would be our two date values. So it would go from 1st September to 15th September, this first order. So if we look here, that's how long it lasts. Pretty simple. The thing is, if you don't have these two values, then the timeline function won't work for you. So keep that in mind if you're trying to use this. Now the next thing is, we have card titles, right? Notice here it just has the little string of digits, which are the actual work order numbers, right? And those are the titles, but you can change those to any other column there in our original data set. So firstly, we could use, for example, district, right, just to show where, or maybe lead tech to show who's doing it. But I'll keep it as the work order just for now. Another thing is the color on your timeline. So notice here it's blue, light blue, blue, light blue, blue, light blue, just alternating, and that's because here it's also that exact same pattern. So the way we can change that is by changing the actual pattern in here. But if you want to, you can do that either two ways, right? One, you can go in and manually change it, but when you have data sets which in like the actual sample are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rows long, you don't want to do it manually, right? And this is where a very important tool comes in called conditional formatting. What you do is you select the column, then you right click, and then you click here conditional formatting. So the way you can do this is, well, one way you can do this is you check the actual word, right? So here it's the service, so we have assess, replace, deliver, repair. Those are the different options, right? So it's very simple if blank then blank system, right? So format cells if text contains, right? And then we can put in a value. So for example, if I were to put in assess, right? Then notice all the assesses turn green, right? And this is automatic, which is what makes it perfect. Now I can add another rule, right? If text contains replace, then it turns, let's just say blue, right? Or that's a bit of an ugly blue. Let's go with yellow, right? And then another rule, if text contains deliver, right? Change it to red, right? And last one is repair. If text contains, well, another rule, if text contains repair, then we change it to, say, purple. So now, crazy, we have these automatically colored, and we can add in more and more lines, right? And it'll automatically color them, which is absolutely amazing, especially when you have data sets which are way, way, way too long, right? And that is one of the key things in Google Spreadsheets, being able to do this kind of thing. So you may be wondering, okay, we've colored these, but how's that relevant? So now we go back to the timeline, right? So down here in optional fields, so card color, right? This is why the conditional formatting was important with this data. Since now, if we change this to service, right? Now all the colors are applied. right? And then you can do that with any of the other fields, just with that same conditional formatting. So now we have this colored, right? We can also have card detail. So for example, if we were to put in here lead tech, then it'll show who's doing it alongside the work order, which is pretty cool, right? And then we can also choose group. So we can also, for example, group them by, say, district, right? And then now we have every single major point in our data expressed through this timeline. And that's amazing, right? So now we have a way to visualize all of these columns, all of these 4 columns, plus these dates, so all these 6 columns through one simple timeline. And that is the beauty of spreadsheets, right? It's the ability to take 6 sets of data and then summarize them all together at the same time, automatically. So that is how you use timelines in Google Spreadsheets. If you have any questions, have any concerns, please write them in the comments. Same with our graphs here. If you have any questions, have any concerns, write them in the comments. If you have any ideas for later videos, also write those in the comments. Maybe like and subscribe, maybe, if you're interested. Who knows? And that's it for this week's episode. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.